All right, good evening. Welcome to the Warrant Committee meeting of December 15th, 2025. Karen, if you're online, can you call roll so we can start the meeting? I cannot hear anyone speaking. Okay, I see you. Halfway there.
We're sorry. I'm going to call the roll because I haven't seen everybody in the room.
Yeah, okay.
But I know we have Jay, Macy,
Macy, no.
Nicole.
Yep.
Elaine,
No, not Elaine.
Jamesley,
Nope.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Grace,
Yes.
Larry,
Larry's not here.
Andrew,
Here.
No, he's online, isn't he?
Julia,
Here.
Andrew's here.
Here.
Brian,
I apologize. Andrew's online.
and I think we have Julia and Brian.
Yep.
Yes.
Lee Michael, Ron, Nick, Cecile. You have a quorum.
Okay, great. So the first thing on the agenda will be, the second thing on the agenda is minutes, because as requested, move minutes up to the early part of the agenda. But before that, we're going to have Mr. Milano, our town administrator, come speak with us about where the budget stands for the moment. Good. Matter where to go. Wherever you're comfortable.
Good evening. Thank you for having me and taking the time. I will provide a brief update with some slides just to show where we are in pulling together the fiscal 27 budget. Leave my notebook in the office, so if there are any questions, I'll take notes on this and transcribe them later. Just give me a minute and I will join the Zoom so I can share the screen. I was not ready in the moment. So just to share generally where things stand is that we have received departmental requests from all the town departments. We have provided those as well to the Warrant Committee through a shared folder with all of those requests in an Excel format. If there's any additional information or additional background information that would be helpful, feel free to reach out to myself, to Amy Dexter, to the departments you're working with. I know most of you, if not all of you, have had at least initial conversations or reached out to begin those conversations on a department by department basis. So obviously whatever we can do to make our folks available, we will do that.
Is there information on each of the folders? Because I went in, I think last week and didn't see it in there.
Some of the larger like shared budgets may not be in there.
Okay.
So if you don't see something you're looking for, if you ping myself or Amy,
Yeah,
we will
meeting with
get you
Amy,
that
so I'll
information.
follow.
Okay, yeah, so she can run through that.
Yep.
So when I was here in September, when the committee had its summit, I talked at a greater length and in more detail about in particular the revenue that we use on an annual basis as part of the operating budget. So I'm not going to go into as much specific line by line detail, but I'll provide an overview. I'm happy to take questions about any of these as we go through. A couple of them are estimates at this point that we will look to refine as we get additional information over the next couple of months. By the end of January, we will arrive at what we view as pretty final estimates for each of these revenue categories that aren't final at this point. The largest lion's share of our revenue obviously is property taxes, and our property tax levy for fiscal 27. So everything is, we're talking about the 27 budget. So in fiscal 27, we're assuming that will increase the levy as to the greatest capacity that we're supposed to or able to under Prop 2.5, which is a 2.5% levy increase. That comes out to about $2.8 million in new tax revenue. In addition to that, we're able to capture new growth that occurs in the prior year as part of the fiscal 27 levy. So that will get us, and as of right now, we're holding that as an estimate at $1 million. Each of the past 4 years, we've surpassed that $1 million figure. In fiscal 26, new growth was measured at 1.499 million, which is the highest it's been ever, and that's largely due just to the developments that are going up around town. A number of 40B and other projects are being built as we speak. So as the buildings go up, we're able to capture value there and tax them. So as they come online, we'll capture it as new growth, and then they'll remain on the levy as part of the base moving forward. So the total increase on property taxes, which again is the lion's share of our revenue, is $3.8 million from fiscal 26. So that's $3.8 million in quote unquote new funding available for the 27 budget. The other categories are somewhat smaller. Local receipts, we budget at a 1% increase right now. That's about a $10 million budget. So we're budgeting a 1% increase, which translates to about $100,000. Again, this one we're diving a little bit more in depth into it to try to refine that. For fiscal 27, this is a place, and we discussed this at the summit meeting, where we've had revenue over and above our budget through motor vehicle excise taxes, through interest income on money that the town is earning on its savings, building permit fees, like I just mentioned with new growth, as we have large developments, we're generating a significant amount of building permit revenue. 582 Blue Hill Lab, which is a new 40B project, 84 units, which started site clearance in the last couple of weeks and has a building permit. Its building permit fee was over $400,000. So that'll contribute to these significant income in fiscal 26, our current year. Our challenge is to try to forecast what the next fiscal year will bring in. For indirect costs from enterprise funds, I flagged this because it's about an $80,000 item year over year. So I can explain this in more detail if I need to, but we operate 3 enterprise funds: water, sewer, and stormwater. They pay for their expenses in the individuals or share of the individuals that work for them. And then we charge back to those enterprise funds for fringe benefits for employees, health insurance, retirement, et cetera. That's where this payment comes back to the general fund. State aid is the second biggest category. This is about $17 million overall for fiscal 27. Again, in keeping it conservative at this point in the year, we're anticipating 1% increase for Chapter 70 education aid, which is the largest of these categories, and 2% for unrestricted general government aid, which is the second largest. The unrestricted general government aid, UGA is the acronym, is about $3.9 million. So it's not a huge amount on a year over year basis. The Chapter 70 education aid is larger, so we're estimating about a 1% increase, or about $130,000. These numbers will be updated when the governor releases her state budget, which comes in the middle of January. So they're placeholders for now, and then what we'll use in the budget moving forward is what Governor Healy announces when she releases the state budget. That typically happens in mid-January. The other key data point to that is that the state will set its consensus revenue forecast for fiscal 27. That will happen likely tomorrow at the state level. House Ways and Means and Senate Ways and Means are meeting tomorrow to set that consensus revenue number. So that will give us a little bit of insight where we expect that state aid. I will note that there are increasing pressures on that state budget, especially as there have been policy changes at the federal government level that are impacting how the state is looking at its budget. So state aid has been okay for Milton the last several years, and it's one we're hoping it'll remain so, but we're waiting to see what that budget will look like when it comes out in January. So the bottom line is, if you take all of that together in terms of what is new revenue for fiscal 27 from last year to this year, it's a total of $4.2 million, just shy of a 3% increase, of which $3.8 million is property taxes. So, if we're hopefully able to adjust some of these upwards, I just do so noting that doesn't mean there's going to be another $3.8 million of revenue. It will be, even where we're able to make some adjustments, it's not going to be on the scale of millions. It'll be more on the scale of hundreds of thousands. So overall, right now, as things stand, we're looking at a $4.2 million increase in new funding, or a 3% increase year over year. There are other revenue sources that we have, but they haven't been rolled into the math that we're looking at here. Free cash is certified at $4.5 million. That money is available to be appropriated. Our new financial policy that the select board recently looked at is that we won't use free cash, which is largely one-time money for recurring budget expenses. So we wouldn't look to inject that into the budget to fund recurring expenses, but there might be one-time expenses within our budget that we could fund with free cash, as well as make contributions to stabilization funds, to reserves, and fund our capital budget. The other revenue source I want to flag is the operating budget stabilization fund, which was voted in as part of the override in fiscal '26. So there's a recurring additional component of the override, which is $700,000. So the override was $9.5 million in total, $700,000 of which was dedicated to an operating budget stabilization fund. That number can increase up to 2.5% each year if the select board so votes. So that's a recurring source that's going right now directly into that operating budget stabilization fund, but town meeting can appropriate money from that fund with a 2/3 vote. That fund is also capitalized with a $2 million appropriation from free cash. So at the beginning of the year, the balance was $2.7 million, and then in fiscal '27, if there's money put into it or money taken out of it, that would affect that balance. But where the numbers that you're looking at, and when we provide a summary overview of where things stand, it doesn't assume any injection of that into the budget as of today.
Yes, question. We put $2 million in the stabilization fund, right? Free cash. Does that mean the free cash was $6.5 million? Or was it, did it go from 4.5?
It was the prior year's free cash.
Yeah.
So it was about $4 million last year, of which $2 million was put into this fund. So there's the free cash, the $4.5 million number that I mentioned was certified as of June 30, 2025. So that is what's available to be appropriated. Enough, 60,000 of it has been appropriated for the election, but otherwise it hasn't been touched.
So did we have, so there was 2 million from the year before this? There was 4, and then you took 2 out.
Yep.
There was 2 from 2 years ago, and then there's 4.5 from this past year.
Correct.
So it's total 6.5 million total free cash?
No, if we're combining the years, so there's about 4 million, there was about 4 million at the end of fiscal '24. The exact number is escaping me now. But that is the free cash certified amount, that 2 million of which was used for the operating budget stabilization fund. It was about 4 million.
Yes.
Then we appropriated all of it. Then at the end of fiscal '25, a new free cash amount was certified at 4.5 million, and that's what is
We
we're
should
talking about.
appropriate the rest of it.
So we had, 4.5, appropriated all, went to 0, certified again at around 4.5, and now we're talking about how to spend that money in fiscal '27.
And now that we're MBTA compliant, we can do grants, right?
Correct.
So that's also, I don't know if we're-
Oh, yes, no, exactly. Where we would have been ineligible for, unlikely to receive significant grants, we're back available, and we've started to receive grants that we hadn't been receiving before. Those typically aren't supporting operating budgets so much as discrete. Most of the grants that we go after are funding like discrete capital projects or discrete studies that are more like one-time things. The schools, there's more opportunities there for the schools to support services through grants.
Partly I'm asking, partly I'm sharing. For free cash, the town of Milton, at least in recent years, has, I'll say, spent down every penny of it. Some of it is putting money into our savings account. We zero that out. Now, I believe that you, working with the select board, have a new policy that you, and a lot of other towns leave money in the free cash account from year to year. And I think you and the select board have adopted a new policy that you're gonna leave some money in the free cash account every year. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. And so that so we know, knock on wood, we're starting the next year with the balance already. It's another way to call it a reserve, so it just sets it aside. There have been years where that free cash amount has been very low. This gives us a little leg up, so if something were to come up and we needed to make an appropriation, that source is there.
Are you keeping it at a percentage, or how is you deciding?
Yeah, it was 10%.
Oh, 10% of the
10%
free
of
cash
free
is gonna stay, okay.
So if it goes into this account, it's not earning interest, that's all. Main difference, right?
No, it would be considered as, it will be shown on our balance sheet as free cash, but it will be considered as part of our overall cash flow purposes, of which the treasurer will manage and put into accounts and out of accounts to incur earnings. If that money was, for example, appropriated to stabilization fund, that is managed separately and apart, and though any of those earnings in a stabilization fund stay with the stabilization fund. So the interest income that we talk about when it's local receipts, that's just general earnings on all of the town's money, save except for stabilization funds and other like dedicated trust funds. Alright, so in terms of expenses, I didn't run through an overview. I'll just speak to them kind of generally. You have the department by department budget. A couple of the other key larger expenses are health insurance. Health insurance right now is budgeted, and I'll speak at greater length about health insurance in a moment, but health insurance right now is budgeted at a 7% year over year. Our pension system is fully funded, so in fiscal '27, our projection includes the shared column includes our appropriation to the pension system, which is in accordance with the 2-year funding schedule set out by the retirement board. Other post-employment benefits, so there's about a $1.6 million appropriation to the other post-employment benefits trust, the OPEB trust, in accordance with our financial policy, so that's incorporated in the shared amount under fiscal '27. The other large kind of non-departmental appropriation at the top of my head would be general insurance, which is property, automobile, just our general liability insurance, as well as our workers' comp coverage. That's budgeted at an 8% year over year. That's about a $1 million budget overall, slightly more. That's also covered here in the shared category. Otherwise, the requests that we've received from department heads on the town side have been totaled here under town. So in the aggregate, it's about a 3.6% year over year increase. Some departments are going up slightly more, some slightly less. Our collective bargaining contracts all expired on June 30 of 2025. So the fiscal '27 doesn't have any appropriations for those contracts within each departmental budget in the terms of any cost of living adjustment or other new wage and otherwise benefit that is awarded. The town budgets those as an entirely separate budget account called the collective bargaining wage set aside. So that account has been close to doubled from last year, not quite, but close to doubled from last year to account for potentially 2 years of a collective bargaining agreement when and if we reach agreements with our unions, our 7 unions on the town side. So a few departments have had requests over and above a slight increase, but that's just due to contractual changes. So we have worked on a level service budget on the town departmental side. We haven't finished going through and consolidating and identifying, from my perspective, any tweaks we would make to those departmental budgets. So we'll do that and provide an update as in terms of what my recommendation is for all those budgets. But what I'm showing right here is those requests as received.
So
At
you
a 3
expect
point-
that to go down once you go through it a little bit to make it even? Is that the hope
Down or up, I guess, yeah, but right now we're looking at down based on
for
this. So
budget balance?
yeah. And what we've done for the schools is, again, just this is all kind of still early stages, is that 5.2% increase that we're showing has been a number that they've talked about with their finance subcommittee at meetings. So that's what we're showing here is a 5.2% year over year for the schools. Blue Hill Regional, I carved that out just because it's not quite a school's expense, not quite a shared expense. So we have students who go to Blue Hills Regional Vocational Technical High School, so we get an annual appropriation for that. This appropriation has been all over the place the last few years, just based on school population. So we've budgeted an increase. It could go up more than that, or it could go down significantly. We'll get final numbers on that in February, March timeframe. And I mentioned the shared expenses. The other shared expense I just want to flag is debt service. So we haven't quite finalized our debt service budget. That's a place where we've had significant growth as anticipated in fiscal '27. I know I've talked about this a few different times, whether with the prior warrant committee, but several large projects that in a normal cycle would have been appropriate or would have been borrowed in the last few years are all kind of coming together at once in fiscal 27 in terms of what we expect to borrow for. So in June of 22 at town meeting approved a $1.6 million ladder truck. They take 4 years to arrive now, so we're expecting arrival of that in June, July. So whereas you might typically have borrowed that in 22, 23 and already started making payments on it, we're gonna make an initial payment if we receive it as expected in fiscal 27. The Lower Guile Turf Field project, which is $2 million in borrowing authorization, also approved, I believe in 2022, has been held up through conservation and now been appealed by abutters. So that project's been delayed. It's been heard through an appeals process through Mass DEP. So we expect a hearing an answer at some point in the coming months. We don't know quite when, but again, that's a $2 million project that if we get a hearing or a ruling in the town's favor in the next several months, that could be built next construction season. So again, that's a significant cost that we would first be paying the debt for in fiscal 27. And then lastly, we did the Cunningham renovation, which was a larger than typical borrowing project that we would fund. And I know this one, but there's another fire engine that's due to arrive next year that was ordered in 2023 that hasn't arrived yet, that we expect in the new year or in like March, April timeframe. So that is another factor in the shared budget that I wanted to speak about. So the bottom line is where things stand today with the town departmental requests as submitted by department heads, with our shared costs as we anticipate them today, with the school's kind of initial number that we're using just to show where things are at. We're at a $2.5 million in expenses more than we have in revenue. We have a large school budget, and as you can see, that increase is almost $3.8 million. And if we go back to the property tax increase, that increase year over year is almost $3.8 million. So that eats up almost all of our Prop 2.5 available revenue. And as we're seeing on the town side, and I know the schools see it too, is the cost of doing business doesn't keep up with Prop 2.5. So it's the challenge we face. So the work that we need to do is to identify ways to adjust these expenses where possible, and maintaining level service where possible, and then look at ways to finalize our revenue projections so we have a better handle on where this all stands. I'm talking more than showing, so I don't know if there's any questions on what I've just discussed here.
So, question for the deficit, so does that come out of free cash to pay for that, or are we covering that extra?
In theory, yes, it could, but then we're paying $2.5 million with one-time money for costs that we will also have in fiscal 28.
Okay.
And we might not have a revenue source for that. So the short answer is yes, sure, but the long answer is really that wouldn't be a sustainable way
No, I
to
get
build
it,
a budget.
but,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
So a combination, hopefully, of finding places where expenses, we have them today, can come down, where if we feel comfortable with increasing our revenue projection, great. But the town departmental budget's increasing at 3.5% year over year. That's also not really sustainable when we look at a revenue increase of about 3% a year. So it's a matter of trying to work through these things as much as possible. And I'll just note that in fiscal 28, our trash collection contract comes up, our trash disposal contract comes up, and our recyclables disposal contract all comes up. So those are 3 large contracts that are signed and under agreement through fiscal 27, but then they come out in 28. Recyclables market, maybe that'll be in better shape than it is today, but it's just one of those kind of unknown factors that we're not even talking about for 27. So
I think I have 2 questions.
Sure.
The trash stickers that you just talked about, does that come through, is that local receipts? I don't know where that is on the revenues.
yes, trash sticker fee revenue comes in under local receipts.
Okay.
It's about 1.6 million.
Perfect. And then that one, issue 1 that we just voted on for the property tax one time, is that was spent, I'm never quite sure where that is, or is that part of
The which?
the override? Yeah, is the override?
That's the 700,000 that's going to this.
So there's $700,000 in the override that is
Got it.
recurring
Got it,
that
got it.
we have not it's not showing up in the revenue column.
Okay, I just wanna
Yep.
make total sure of that. Is that the 700 from a couple slides ago?
Correct.
In the stabilization? Okay, got it. So, I was just not quite sure where that fell in.
So the way that works is the $700,000 that is recurring revenue, it flows directly into the operating budget stabilization fund.
Perfect.
So then to use any money within that fund, you have to appropriate it out as part of the budget. So that could be a revenue source that's used to help offset some of this. Correct.
Right, because
That's the
it's
other possible way of paying for the
considered
service.
operating.
And the rest of the override, the $8.5-ish million, that's in the property tax, which is, if you go back one slide, is the property tax, and that's increasing by 2.5% per year, but it's built in that bottom number that this is 2.5% of.
Is that stabilization, is that over, I mean, that override, is that over a couple of years or does it?
So the amount of the override was $9.5 million, and that was all built into, so what the override does is allows us to increase what we are allowed to levy on all property owners. So that went up by $9.5 million. And so that increase was included in the tax bills that will be going out this month.
So all that would be collected in this next coming year,
Correct.
not like over a series of years?
Correct.
Okay.
It's actually a challenge within Prop 2.5 that you're not allowed to say, in fiscal '26, we want $8 million in revenue, in fiscal '29, we want $10 million. You can't like phase it in.
Mhm.
But it's a good question because
Yeah.
the Mass Municipal Association, which represents cities and towns, is talking about Proposition 2.5, and that's one of the things that they floated out there as possible ideas. Give cities and towns the option or ability to like have phased in overrides to
Right.
account for cost of
Yeah.
living.
So it's a higher base then.
Every
So
year.
you're increasing your taxes every year, you're starting from a higher number.
Correct. So the override is permanent, so that 8.8 into the budget is permanent
So
as
it
part of the
stays
levy
at that
for
level,
forever.
that level sets out.
And we're allowed to
Okay.
then increase that by 2.5% for fiscal '26, the amount that went into the operating budget is the 8.8. In fiscal '27, it's 8.8 plus 2.5% of 8.8.
Unless somehow we fall into a huge amount of money, we decide to lower taxes.
That's correct.
That's always possible.
And for fiscal '26, as an example, because new growth came in so high, we actually didn't tax to the max that we were allowed to. Typically, Milton in a Prop 2.5 community will go up to, within $100,000 of what our levy limit is. But because new growth came in well above our expectation, we didn't tax it. The town could have said, all right, let's make some additional appropriations to take advantage of this unexpected revenue, but it wasn't taxed because it was unexpected.
So are we forevermore at a lower level?
No, this
Those
assumes,
expenses are
fiscal
fixed
'27
costs.
assumes we then tax all of that.
Okay.
So is there a point at which 2, 3, 4 years out where we get to a point where we just can't sustain this, like this model breaks?
Do another
That's
override.
the override.
So that's the only way we can do this is through an override, there's no
It's
other way.
it's a
2.5.
solution, sure, but other solutions, whether it's seeking different kinds of growth that might be more sustainable, I think that's another solution.
Right.
Reducing
Services.
expenses.
No, I know, but there's a point where you can only do that so much. I mean, this isn't a huge, run a division that's bigger than your budget. So it's not a huge budget, you know what I mean, so.
Oh, go on.
Do you know why the school's going up 5.2%?
I've had conversations with the superintendent, just to debrief on where their budget is. A large portion of that is where they estimate their cost of maintaining the educators that they have today, just with cost of a new potential collective bargaining agreement, steps that they're able to earn each year as part of their collective bargaining agreement, the lanes that they move in. So I don't wanna speak for them, but their information that they'll share and they'll debrief with this committee on, I think the lion's share of that is just where they expect teacher salaries or educator salaries to be for fiscal '27.
So the salary, not head count.
Salaries of the
I
existing.
thought they said it was like
budgeted amount.
91% was salaries when they came here.
How much?
It was 91% of the budget was salaries when we looked at it.
Yeah, right, their budget is like $60 million in salaries and then $10 million-ish in expenses. And they displayed in the finance committee meeting, like a one-pager that said how they got to where their number is, and the first row was just salary expenses, keeping the same headcount.
Oh, so there's a,
It's a level service, keeping the same FTE.
and collective bargaining is baked into that 5.2%.
Again, I don't wanna stray beyond what my area of control and expertise is, so my understanding is that they've accounted for where they expect a new contract to be. Their contract is, they signed 1-year agreements with each of their units, they're supposed to be up this year as well, but they signed 1-year agreements, so they're under contract today, but it expires, I think their cycle is August of 26, it would be up.
Is that usual to have a 1-year contract, collective bargaining agreement?
Communities will do it occasionally if the parties just think they're not ready to kind of go into
To
a
commit to
full
multi-years.
negotiations on a 3-year.
Can you go to the your expense slide? Projections, the budget, 2026 budget. Do you have a feeling if you're on budget? Is that like a good projection?
Yeah, I think, so we
Well,
look
you
at it
know-
on a regular basis to where the town departmental budgets will be. I think we feel comfortable where things are, where winter has started. So like our biggest variable on a year-to-year basis in terms of the departmental budgets really is what is snow and ice gonna look like. And you know, not a very major snowstorm yesterday, but that meant salt crews were out on a Sunday earning double time, so it's an expensive small storm. So it's those kinds of, that's the variable on a year-to-year basis with the town budget, which is the hardest to kind of nail down. We have vacancies in some of our larger departments, public works, police, and fire. So there's naturally some savings there. We incur overtime expenses to cover when there are vacancies, but generally that's not as expensive as necessarily having a full person there. There's been vacancies in my office and a few other offices in town hall, so we feel good in terms of fiscal 26 from a departmental budget as pre-winter. We'll see what it looks like post-winter. And then for shared expenses, those are largely on target. The biggest variable would be health insurance. If, for example, we had a big spike in enrollment that we didn't quite anticipate, but that hasn't been the case. Our enrollment has been flat for the last several months. There's been some migration from individual plans to family plans, which costs us more than originally anticipated, but overall enrollment has been pretty flat. So in terms of cost centers that might be concerning for us on an annual basis, it's usually what are, you know, police and fire expenses, and then snow and ice, and then what does health insurance look like?
And I heard the Cunningham project came in under budget.
Yes, yeah, I think we were a little over conservative in anticipating what that project was gonna cost. We had budgeted $5.5 million and have appropriation for $5.5 million. The bids and the construction contract were closer to the $3 million range. And so we expect it'll be below $4 million. The more challenging part of the project is the next phase, which is renovating the old 4th floor area. Just because there's some unknowns with that ceiling. So once we get through that, we should have a better line of sight as to what that number will finally be. But that includes, like, below $4 million includes using all of the contingency, which we don't expect. So no, we had a great contractor, a good architect and project manager that worked out really well so far. So one phase done, so we're not counting any chickens yet, but counting
That was
eggs and
high.
chickens.
I was like,
Thank you.
Health insurance benefits, how much do we cover for employees? Is it 100%?
How do you mean?
Like for benefits, like do they have to pay a certain percentage and then we do?
Yeah, so I have several slides on health insurance, so I'll just kick that to that, just because I wanted to cover that in greater detail. And so I'll move into that, if folks are ready. So health insurance last year went up. The premium increase was 14%. The budget itself went up by more than that because we had to adjust for higher enrollment that we historically had. So we were hit with kind of a 2-factor increase for fiscal 26, which was both a jump in enrollment plus a dramatic increase in claims and medical costs. So it consumed a lot of conversation in last year's budget, and I'm providing a little bit more of a in the weeds conversation on health insurance this year, cause that will be the same this year. We're not seeing any slowdown in medical costs. And there have been a number of conversations about how cities and towns are grappling with health insurance costs, so it's a large cost center for us. Every 1% increase on a premium is about $140,000, so just a few percentage points above where we expect it is drive costs way up. So in terms of just kind of how this works, Milton is self-insured. So we offer a Blue Cross plan and a Harvard Pilgrim plan. But then we pay the claims based on the rates that the insurers negotiate with the medical providers. So we're self-insured, both employees and retirees. Once you're Medicare eligible, you have to transfer onto Medicare at that point. For premiums, we pay 76%, the town pays 76%, employees pay 24%. There are other retiree benefits for health insurance, including we offer supplemental Medicare plans, and we split the premiums on those at 50-50 with the retiree in the town. And then we're also reimbursing 50% of the Part B cost on a monthly basis. So there are additional benefits from retirees. So that's just health insurance writ large. Premiums, the budget amount what we see is the amount that we expect that the town's premiums are going to cost for the employees and retirees. Those are paid into the health trust fund. So the health trust fund gets the premium payments from both the employees and from the town. As I mentioned, the medical claims are then paid out of that trust. Because we're self-insured and because we're paying for the claims expenses, we then buy stop loss insurance. So that's on a per claim, per fiscal year basis. So if there's somebody who has an illness and their claim costs $500,000 over the course of a fiscal year, our liability is stopped at $175,000. Then we get reimbursed for those costs over and above that. So we pay for that insurance coverage as a protection. And then our premium is adjusted annually to count for we expect claims to be what our experience has been in the past year, where our trust is generally. So again, the bottom line is that the health insurance budget funds the premium, the town share of premiums. The health trust fund actually pays the claims out. So when we're setting that premium increase, we're keeping an eye on where that health trust fund is. Overall, if you zoom out,
Just a
go back.
question, just on
Sure.
the, if you go to the slide before that, so we're at 76-24, is that dictated by policy or is it something with flexibility on paying?
That's in an agreement with the unions. To
Union
change
agreement.
that would require bargaining with all of the units across the town and the schools.
Okay. So that's kind of dictated, that's flat, that's not gonna go anywhere unless it's changed by the whole contract.
It could be changed if we entered into negotiations on health insurance, and that was one place where the parties met agreement. It's not likely necessarily a place where folks would go. So we are allowed, cities and towns are allowed to do plan design changes, and to a point. So the state employer is the group insurance commission. We
Yeah, I
can
know, I
we
was
can
just looking at it
negotiate
online
plan
too,
design
yeah.
changes to an extent.
Yep.
Not quite unilaterally, but with conversation with the unions, but they don't hold a veto on that. So there's limited plan design changes the town could make. But negotiating something like that would be true collective bargaining. So again, just to step back, so health insurance has grown at about 6% a year. If you go back to fiscal 2017, it's not 6% a year linearly. It's been, it'll jump and then kind of settle down for a couple of years, and then it might jump again. So there have been a few years where costs spike, and then we'll be stable thereafter for a bit. So the pressure is put on us if we have more than typical claims, whether we have bad luck year with health generally for employees, growth in medical costs just generally, everybody's feeling that pressure. So if the same amount of care costs more, then we need to raise those premiums. There's also been significant increase in pharmaceutical costs, and the one that's gotten a lot of headlines are the GLP-1s in terms of the coverages there for diabetes and weight loss. So that eats up a significant portion of our costs as well. So again, where we saw the need for a significant premium increase for this fiscal year is because our experience last year that we were tracking throughout the year was tracking well above where we had been in history. And you can see that from the balances of the health trust here. So the health trust was $6.6 million. Then we spent almost $3 million of it in fiscal '25. So premiums were being paid into the trust, but our costs were so high that we spent all the additional premium plus almost $3 million in addition to that. So that put that health trust more generally at a lower balance than it's been historically. Here you can see it just to kind of tie out how the health insurance appropriation typically looks like. So you see a couple of years steady, and then it jumped in fiscal '20, and then steady for a couple of years, jumped again in '21, and then flat for several years, and jumped in '26. And then by the flip side, you can see how our medical expenses out of the trust have looked again, where every employer, every insurer saw drastic drops in utilization in that first COVID year. How much that's contributing to costs that we're seeing today. It's something folks talk about, that delayed treatments, delayed medical care probably is compounding some of the issues that we're seeing today, but that 2025 claims experience was just so far beyond what we had seen in recent years, which is why, as we look at '27, while we had budgeted a 7% increase, where we think, based on a conversation with our health insurer consultant on Friday afternoon, is that should really be in the 14% ballpark, which would be $900,000 to $1 million increase to that budget expense that isn't shown on that prior slide. So while we budgeted health insurance at 7%, our initial budget was thinking 7%. Right now, we're thinking we need to adjust that upwards close to where we were last year, which would be at 14%. There are a couple of things in play that might change that. As I alluded to, some of the coverage around certain pharmaceuticals, or Blue Cross and Harvard Pilgrim and others, are changing how they're treating some of these coverages, which might have then an impact on us and our medical costs. But for now, we're going to have to revise that health insurance forecast up pretty significantly from a 7% increase to a 14%. And that should add about $1 million in expense to the budget beyond what I showed previously. Which is why I wanted to do probably a deeper dive into health insurance than anybody wanted to hear this evening. But I thought the context was important because
That's not true.
and a few folks may have wanted to hear. But I thought it was important because we're going to be talking a lot about that and how to make this budget work in the context of a year where we've not had a year like this where we've had to deal with two substantial increases to our health insurance. As I mentioned, there have been years where that's happened, and then things, you raise the premiums and then you catch up to where the costs are. Which is why we felt okay with that 7% number, thinking, okay, we've significantly raised the premiums, we're going to catch up to the cost, and then we'll be able to relax that for a year or two. Unfortunately, that's not played out. And I just wanted to share that this has not been just something we're talking about in Milton. The Mass Municipal Association held a forum on healthcare costs in October that I attended. Representatives from Blue Cross were there, the Group Insurance Commission at the state level, the Health Policy Commission, I think, which is a state agency. Our advisor, Hild Group, held a roundtable event that I went to in November. And then I just flagged a couple of the Boston Globe headlines that the health insurance premiums just keep going up. Headline was about, I think, Fall River and New Bedford and the cost that they're experiencing for that community. And then, as I mentioned, in terms of pharmaceuticals and the drugs that we're seeing costs. So this is present. We're all talking about it. Nobody's come up with a solution yet, but we've been engaged on the issue.
The Mass Municipal Association was talking about possible remedies.
Yes.
Anything that's not maybe fictional and imaginary? Like, is there a realistic idea of, I don't know, the state government giving if all the towns are facing this, misery loves company, increase state aid to help us all out?
Well, in addition to their conversations in health costs, as I mentioned earlier, Mass Municipal Association has been talking about Proposition 2.5, and they've released two reports. One was an assessment of Proposition 2.5, and then last week they released a bunch of recommendations coming out of that. And while they want to keep talking about Prop 2.5, they know that's a very challenging political subject to bring up. So they focused a lot of that follow-up report on how state aid has declined when you compare it against inflation and other costs. So there are drastic reductions to the unrestricted general government aid category in the wake of the Great Recession. And while they've increased it a few percent every year, when you make a new floor and only go up a little bit each year, you never get back to where it should have been. So I would say their biggest push right now is focused around the tagline is $351 million for 351 cities and towns to get that unrestricted general government aid, at least kind of right size it a little bit. That might help. But that's one potential source, and that's going into a state budget that has its own issues to wrestle with. So we'll see how that shakes out, but it's going to be a tricky conversation for the town to have, and I just wanted to be kind of candid with where we're at right now.
Are other towns at the 14% too? I know they're all going up, but going up to that extent?
So last year, I think we were at 14. We have a pretty good group of managers in Norfolk County that get together on a monthly basis, and we had done a survey. So last year, I would say the range was there were a few communities in single digits. A couple of them were in like larger consortiums. A bunch of communities in Norfolk County are in the group insurance commission, like we can go into the GIC if we negotiate it with the unions. The GIC increase was 12%. I worked in Medfield for several years, their increase was 19. So it's I would say we were not quite middle of the road, we were probably a little bit higher than average, but we weren't.
They're all double digits.
Well, yeah, for the most part, there are one or two communities that were in single digits, but the rest were above double digits.
Or if I heard you correctly, you said there were two things that had contributed to the health insurance. And so one was the big increase this year. Is it because the second one, the next, you think there's gonna be a big increase for the next year, or is there something?
Oh, no, that's right, that's a good point. So the two things that I mentioned were enrollment and then cost. So on the enrollment side, we experienced steadily increasing enrollment for the past several fiscal years. And in fiscal 25.
So that means more employees of the
More
town?
employees on the plan.
Or more like family members of employees, or both?
It's really a combination, so hard to kind of pinpoint an exact reason. There were more people on our plans over the past several years than there had been historically. When people have children, you know, they're picking whose spouse's plan are they gonna go on. We have generally, municipal health plans are generally good plans. They're expensive plans, but they're good plans. We find people typically come over to our plan, like they're not high deductible plans, they are deductibles, but for an individual it's $400, for a family it's $800. It's not, you know, an HSA eligible high deductible plan where the deductible is $400, $4,000. We're not on the scale of those. So on the enrollment front, higher FTE count, higher enrollment overall. This year, as I mentioned, enrollment's been fairly consistent. And actually, I think even declined a little bit in our last census. We get it on a monthly basis. But what we did see is that the enrollment on the individual plans has gone down, but the family plans has gone up. So a family plan will cost us upwards of $20,000, the town to cover. So every one individual plan versus a family plan, that's a significant cost increase. But overall enrollment has been flat, so we're not as worried about enrollment as we were last year. It's more on the cost side that we're experiencing the pressures.
So the two things are higher enrollment and higher costs.
Just overall higher costs.
Combined together, make it more challenging than normal.
Yeah, so at least in 27, we're just talking about not headcount so much,
Okay.
but in 26 for this year, we're talking about both pieces of that, both sides of that coin.
Okay, thank you. Was that the end of your presentation?
That's all I had, and obviously I'm happy to take any further questions folks may have.
I guess sort of a big picture question. You know, we've started discussing some of the larger budgets. We've had some questions to go back to the department heads with. We've had some thoughts. What's the best way for the warrant committee and you to work together? I mean, in the past, it's, you know, Mr. Milano comes down like Moses from the mountain and the budget is on the tablets and we look at it. Is there a better way to go back and forth in your mind?
No, I mean, I think having eyes on all of these budgets is always helpful. If there are ideas and thoughts that department heads have brought to you that the warrant committee is particularly interested in you know, suggesting, hey, this would be great to try to include in the budget, I'll be happy to hear that. If you see places where you're like, wow, maybe this is a place where we're over budgeting and this budget is That's an analysis we try to do, but if that's something you see as well, we're eager for that feedback, and then that it goes into kind of how we try to pull together a final budget before we hand it over to this.
Okay. So maybe that goes back to us. I don't know if we've hammered out, like, are we gonna have suggestions from Mr. Milano before, so you're gonna present your budget to us late January?
That's the timeline we're working on now.
Yeah, I don't know if we've, and I guess the finger should be pointed at me, if we figured out how we're gonna come to a consensus, if we have feedback for you before late January, how we present that. Maybe we'll think about it over the holidays.
I'm sorry, should we do it before or after?
I mean, we can do it before or after, but you know, it just might flow a little more smoothly if we know we have some suggestions. And if we give them to him before he puts his budget together, it might flow a little more smoothly than if we make them after he puts his budget to us. We can do either.
A lot of the suggestions are based on information we're gathering from the department heads.
Mhm.
I assume the department heads are reporting to you. I think there could be things that we think are worthwhile as you know, residents that share.
Yeah.
Does anyone look at revenue, or is anyone tasked with revenue side?
Oh, you're asking when I made assignments? I can't remember. I think
To help you, but
I think I assigned people to like sort of look into what is new growth. You know, like doing a little digging. It's a little iffy because, you know, we are the final say in setting the expenditure budget that presents to town meeting. We're not the final say in the revenue part of that budget. All that is to say, I believe I did assign people to,
I know you said you wanted to talk about it at some point. You and I haven't connected.
okay, were you
Yeah.
the new growth person?
Yeah.
Okay,
we said we
okay.
can talk about it.
Yeah.
New growth, state aid, local receipts.
For Grace specifically?
Grace was new growth and local receipts. along
Okay.
with state aid.
Who's state aid?
Huh?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I know. If you can
Yeah,
find them.
and it's partly to educate, like state aid, if you're the state aid person, you're not gonna influence it, but you might understand it, you know. What's coming towards us.
So did you want me to meet with you to find out where we can look at that? I wasn't even sure what you wanted to do because you and I didn't connect much on that.
Yeah, short answer is yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Long answer is I'll figure that out.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to know what you want me to do.
And we've been having, the vice chair of the Milton Budget Coordination Committee, we've been having pretty detailed conversations about some of those revenue, both in terms of as we work towards a long-term forecast and a consensus long-term forecast, diving more deeply into some of those revenue categories. Our meeting, which we held this morning, we talked about those in great depth. So that recording will be up from Milton TV.
What is it? It's which?
The
committees?
Milton Budget Coordination.
Coordination. Okay, so maybe I should watch that.
And I have some data which we can get to that just
Alright,
gives
so
you
we
a
can
history of a
connect
couple
on
of those
that.
categories.
Alright, that's fine.
Any other questions for Mr. Milano?
I think I heard about that budget coordination committee for the first time last week. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Sure.
But,
Yes.
You know, I'm curious, like, you know, I'm just curious.
Yes, I think best way to kind of describe it is in the wake of some of the issues that we experienced with the school budget in fiscal 25 going into the override. We had conversation about establishing a new committee to meet on a regular basis as a means to share information and critique and come up with ideas on how to better manage the flow of information, some of the assumptions we're working off of. So there's 2 representatives from this committee, 2 representatives from the select board, 2 representatives from the school committee, a member of the planning board, and then 2 residents who are on the committee as well. So we met I'd say a little bit more than monthly at this point to go through a few of these things. We have lengthy conversations about financial policies, financial forecast, and just trying to get information to each of the 3 groups as to so everybody's on the same page as to information, at least.
So Brian and I are your representatives on that committee. And Mr. Walker, Mr. Walker is the vice chair of that committee, would you like to, do you have anything to add to what Mr. Milano said? You are recognized if you have anything to add.
Thanks. The only thing I would add is that I think the charge is to in the short term, try to make sure that there's improved coordination between the warrant committee and the select board and the school committee. I think what we'd all like to accomplish is a no surprises approach to budgeting, so that what happened the last time we were hearing on this thing to be surprised, it doesn't happen again. And in the longer term, sorry. And in the longer term, the objective is to create a format for and a regularly occurring financial forecast that is both looking at the coming budget year and looking approximately 5 years out, and providing both the public and town officials with a much more informed view of what the coming years look like, so that on a regular basis, if there's a need for an override, it will be clear to people why, and that they understand when it's coming and why it's coming. So those are the two. We got a short-term objective and a long-term objective. Thank you.
Actually, you guys have talked about that before. I just didn't put all that together. I apologize.
Totally fine. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Anything else from Mr. Milano? Okay, thank you for coming to visit us.
Of course.
We'll see you
Thank
more
you.
in the spring.
Yes, and obviously open door if any questions that come up. If you have any issues with department heads, please let me know. Any information you're looking for, we're happy to provide it. Thank you and appreciate your ongoing work. And we will have additional warrant articles for the annual town meeting, hopefully finalized in January, early part of January, so give you a better line of sight as to what, in addition to the budget, will be on your docket for the new year.
Is that something you want to speak to, right? I hesitate to even ask, because I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, no, I think, I would expect planning board to try to finalize the sign review stuff. We are looking at a couple of special acts that we might want to adopt just on financial operations, so we're working on that. There's a new-ish property tax exemptions for veterans. A lot of the categories are changed and increased. It's called the HERO Act, so we're working with the Board of Assessors on a recommendation on that. That's it for the moment, and then the big one would be Fire Station Building Committee and their recommendation on next steps for the Atherton projects. They meet again next Monday and again in January, so they're preparing a recommendation. There will be a warrant article. Exactly what that article will be for and about in terms of the Atherton station is to be determined, but that will be coming for the annual town meeting.
That's actually specifically the one I didn't want to put you on the spot, though.
That's all right.
'Cause I do want to talk about that. Maybe we can talk about that now. That, to my mind, that's gonna be the biggest non-budget one this spring. Maybe, we'll see. So, yeah, we've rebuilt this fire station, obviously. We're in the process of rebuilding the East Milton one, and now there's the Atherton Street Fire Station. And I went to one of the Fire Station Building Committee meetings last month, and they were discussing, do they tear it down? Do they add on to what's currently there? What's needed? And then what money are they going to ask from the town this spring to sort of start the planning process, pay for architects, et cetera. We will want somebody from the warrant committee onto that. I think Macy's gonna be involved. Macy wants to be involved. I think she'd be great. I think I wanna be involved because I'm interested. We may want someone else, so
I
yes.
might join, because Nick and I talked a bit about that when we were
Okay.
talking about capital projects and that sort of thing. So I
Okay.
have like this much
It's
knowledge
related
about
to,
it.
but not the same thing as what I asked you to look into, which is the so-called early amendment. Okay,
Exactly, yeah, it's related, so I'm happy to get involved with that if you like.
Is that fire station being decommissioned?
I think that's
Is the-
sort of the
That's
question.
the question.
Which one, the one in East Milton or the other?
The Atherton, so
Atherton.
that's sort of the question is, do we take what's there and refurb it and add on to it? Or do they level it to the ground or something in between? And I sort of, honestly, the last meeting I visited, I walked in halfway through and I need to get up to speed.
My expectation for the article for May will be design appropriation. Quite what that design is, more to come. the project, the full project appropriation to build the project would come at a subsequent town meeting. So the May article will be about the money necessary to finish and do a design to get to a point where they can come to voters with, we need X million dollars to build the station, to renovate the station. So it'll be like a two-step process.
Should call the contractor that did Cunningham.
They are aware, we've made sure.
But even for the first of those two steps, you wanna have a good story for the town meeting and therefore a story for us. What's going on, you know, do we, even if they don't know, are they gonna rebuild it or renovate it? What do they think's gonna happen? What are they considering? Mr. Walker also is a member of the Fire Station Building Committee. I'll resist calling on you again unless you want me to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Good day.
See you next.
Okay. So next on the agenda, Karen, I hope you can help us out with this, minutes. You sent around a handful of minutes last week. Did people get enough of a chance to review the minutes that you're comfortable voting on them? Karen, can I ask for your guidance for what minutes remind us what minutes we're voting on, et cetera?
I sent around May 6th and May 8th, 2024. And then from 2025, we have February 24th, February 25th, March 3rd, March 10th, May 21st, May 29th, June 2nd, June 4th, August 25th, and September 15th.
Okay, so some of those are in this fiscal year with this group. The rest of them are with the previous group, or some of them with even the previous group to that?
First two, I went through and looked, of the current members, Jay, Julia, and Ron
Okay.
were on the committee.
That sounds like that would be probably the meeting, the night of town meeting.
Absolutely, yep.
And as a reminder, all of you are warrant committee members. All of you are allowed to vote. You don't have to abstain just because you weren't at the meeting or even a member of the warrant committee at that meeting. It is your choice to abstain or not. Would people like them split up by cohort year? Or are people fine, or
I just feel weird voting on something that I wasn't there for, but
okay.
I'm voting
I
on
think
the
you
ones
should
that I was in.
Let's at least take votes by cohort. Maybe the first vote could be for the two in May of 2024. Again, every member of the warrant committee is free to vote yes, no, or abstain on this.
That was a good meeting. Fair call.
I'm trying to remember. They're all a blur. So do I have a motion about, I'm sorry, can you remind me the two dates in May 2024, Karen?
May 6th and May 8th.
We have a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion.
Ron makes the motion. I will second it. Can you do a roll call vote, Karen?
Sure. Nicole,
Abstain?
Ainsley,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Abstain.
Grace,
Abstain.
Andrew,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Brian,
Abstain.
Ron,
Yes.
Nick,
Abstain.
Cecile, Jay,
Yes.
motion carries.
Now, do we want a motion? I don't know if I'd prefer not to read all the dates again, but all the ones up to, let's say, June 30th of 2025.
8 sets.
8 sets, okay.
Mhm.
Do we have a motion for those 8 sets of minutes? Ron again,
Second.
Brian seconded. Can you do a roll call vote, Karen?
Nicole,
Abstain, please.
Ainsley,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Abstain.
Grace,
Abstain.
Andrew,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Nick,
Abstain.
Cecile,
Abstain.
Jay,
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that leaves us with, was it 2 in this fiscal year?
August 25th and September 15th.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Ron, everybody's looking at you.
He's a
Second.
man.
Okay, Ron and Brian again.
Second.
Okay. Nicole,
Yes.
Jamesley,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Grace,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Cecile,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you very much, team. Okay, so next, we're gonna continue with presentations about some of the larger budget items in town. On the agenda, there were 4 things listed. One was police. Macy can't be here with us tonight, so she's gonna be presenting on that in January. Also, capital, I think Lorraine said the capital committee's just started their work there this year.
Yeah, I think Nick was saying he hopes to have his recommended approval budget by probably mid-January.
Okay.
Forward.
So that leaves us with parks and DPW. Cecile, I asked you before the meeting started, because I didn't know when Nick was coming, if you wanted to go first. Do you still want to go first?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Usually, do you share the presentation?
Oh, yes, I will share the presentation. I opened it just for that purpose.
Thank you.
Let's see if screen sharing is enabled. Sorry, let me start the slideshow so it looks slightly better. Great.
So I was able to meet with the Parks Department a few weeks ago. They entertained my very basic questions, and so I put it all in a presentation for y'all. So the team consists of about 7 full-time workers on salary and 1 part-time staff on salary. There's also some additional part-time help that they get through funding from other places, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So we have a parks director, rec director, and a principal clerk. But the budget itself is for parks. Recreation doesn't have its own budget. And so they have a lot of responsibilities, as I learned, which I didn't know anything about parks beforehand. So Parks is responsible for maintaining the 121 acres of town land around Milton. The breakdown is on the right, and it is a lot, as you can see. So it includes a lot of fields, parks. There's also like little community areas like Pagoda Circle that aren't official parks, but a lot of people use it for community gatherings. They're also responsible for lining and grooming all of the fields and courts for sports and events. And so as you can imagine, during the spring, it gets very, very busy. And for reference, it takes 2 people a full day to get a softball or a baseball field ready. So it's quite a bit of work that they have to do when there are 4 full-time workers.
Is that each field or all the fields?
Each field is what he told me. I don't play sports, so I don't know, but I trust them.
I'm gonna guess that's all the fields.
But it's not
It could
every
be one
game, it's
field.
just for the spring.
I know, but it's not 2 people all day to do 1 field. There's no way. It's gotta be all the fields. They do
The
all the fields.
lines.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you want, I can get clarification.
That's great. There's no way.
Alright. So, you know, in addition to the fields and lands around Milton, they also have a huge selection of activities that they are responsible for. The full list is on the left, and the one that I thought was interesting and that we talked about for quite a bit was the Wildcat Den, which used to be called After the Bell. So this is where the part-time staffer from the salary and wages page spends their time. But in addition to Sean, who is the coordinator, who's the part-time staff, they also have a rotation of other part-time staffers. I think some of them are students. to oversee the Wildcat Den. And so they are paid through the recreation revolving account, which is basically the funds that we get from these various recreation programs we can then reuse for other recreation events. And so this den is open basically like after school hours, and kids can go there to play games, hang out, do their homework, basically a place to go if their parents aren't home, if they just need a place to go. And this year, they apparently had a huge increase in traffic, so they're seeing like 25 kids a day compared to 8 or 9 in previous years. And I asked why, and he says it's usually based on the cohort of kids. So this year, they just really all like hanging out together, and so they're making good use of the Wildcat Den. Okay, and so recreation revolving was a new concept to me, so I asked them a little bit about it. It's basically money that they get from different activities and other recreation fees that they can use in other areas for other recreation purposes. So they spend about 40,000 a year to seasonal staff in the summer months, so you won't see that in salary and wages. And it pays from some of the other recreational staffing programs. There is also a special needs gift that Bonnie, the clerk, called out. It is used to pay for gym buddies, which meets every other week, to basically like give some kids with special needs a gym buddy to get some physical exercise. And it's free to the participants. The other thing that is outside of the budget that we talked about was the Community Preservation Act. So the Parks and Rec Department does benefit greatly from the CPA funds. And so this is just a list of the currently approved CPA projects. I don't think they're all done or like started, but these are on their radar. I don't think I need to read through them, but yeah, there's some pretty exciting things happening, I think.
And does the park department push those through, or do other entities push those through working with the park department?
What do you mean by push them through?
Well, somebody has to apply to the board that oversees the CPA funds and submit a grant request, and then I don't know. I don't think the park department submits all of those. I think sometimes it's the
Yeah.
entities that submit those.
From what I
And then they work
understand,
with the park department for the implementation. I think once it gets funded, I think the park department might take over the implementation of it, but I'm not sure they submit the applications to all of them.
yeah, I think the Parks Department does take an active role in at least these. I don't know if they submit every single one. I can ask and find out for you.
Does the budget come out of those, the CPA, or is it part of Parks and Rec?
It's not part of Parks. This is, it's
separate-
also, I think
So
a
they
lot of
just
these aren't
implement it, they're
budgeted
not
for
paying
yet.
for it.
These are like approved to get CPA funds.
Like I know the lights and the dugouts was a joint thing between softball and baseball to submit the applications, and I think then the park department implements the funding that gets approved by the CPA funds.
Do you have a question, Brian?
Well, it's probably not the answer, but the walkway around Turner's Pond, what does that mean? Do you know? 'Cause it's a walkway already.
I don't know. So I run around the walkway and it's
Yeah.
pretty, some parts of it, I'm like, I could sprain my ankle really
Oh,
easily.
okay.
I
So
don't know.
like
That's
level,
my
yeah.
assumption, but I know.
Some
it's
parts
not.
get muddy in the rain.
Yeah, it gets really
Yeah.
easy over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it is now divots. And so, like I was trying to push my son in a wheelchair and we almost fell over because of all these divots. So they started doing something, but it definitely needs.
Yeah, and then once it starts freezing, a lot of the paths is like just ice.
Yeah.
I
Just-
walk
it
into
gets
it.
scary.
It's like a
flooded
death
very
trap.
easily.
Yeah. And they have done some work, but yeah, I couldn't quite tell if they were finished and
Yeah.
there's some drainage, like it's a really tough place to, I think, try to build a walkway.
But I can ask and see like what specifically.
I guess I'm back
I'm
to
just curious.
smart aleck comment I've had before, right? If it's the annual like spring cleanup for those fields, I can see that takes 2 people a whole day. But if it's a weekly maintenance, then that's I would be surprised if it takes that much time. So that was probably.
Are you rescinding your snark, Nick?
Yes, yes.
I expect that to be in the minutes,
I
Karen.
apologize.
Snark precision. Snark precision.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool. And then getting into the budget, it's pretty similar to FY '26. They're basically going for level service funding. There's no notable increases. The line items that did increase is basically cost of living increases. And yeah, we can just probably take a look at that. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I just took some screenshots. This is screenshots of the Excel spreadsheet that's available in the shared folder. If you progress one,
Sure.
I basically took the differences. So there are some slight increases in salary and wages and in the total general expenses, totaling a little less than $6,000, and this is the total parks budget. So it's changing not a lot compared to, I think, some of the other budgets that we're looking at. If you can go to the next,
That's like less than 1%.
it's pretty small. They said there were some things that they wanted, but they were told they couldn't apply for it. Like they wanted to get some of the payments for the Wildcat Den onto the salaries section instead of rec revolving, but Nick asked them not to apply for it this year. Yeah, and so this is the breakdown for general expenses. If you go to one next, I just basically highlighted the three things that actually changed. So water, sewer, electricity, and fuel and oil, and those are all cost of living increases, or sorry, grounds and building maintenance. They're all not increasing.
On the water, like, it's going up 58% from what the actual was in '25. That's what I'm showing.
Oh, yeah, I see.
That seems like a lot. I don't know if you know why.
Yeah, that's
It's going from 24 to 38.
I mean, as good a question might be, why did the actual come in so much lower than both?
Well, that's probably an example where they're using the budget, they're appropriating based on the previous year's budget, based on
Rather than
versus the actual,
yeah.
that's that
The
problem.
usage, yeah.
I don't know anything about parks, but if it was a rainy year, maybe they didn't need to water the fields. And
That's what I was thinking.
That's a good question, though.
There was an issue last year where the school was overcharged for, was it water?
it was water,
Like
yes.
$60,000 or something, or 80,000,
Yeah,
something like
I don't remember if it was a,
they discovered it, it was a flaw in the billing, but I don't know.
yeah, I don't know if it was like a specific meter or something. I assume that
That's
if it
what I
was
thought.
something widespread, they would have then looked at other departments.
Brian's right, though, I think we should know, because it's the same thing with like electricity. It's
Electricity,
half of what they had for the budget.
Huh.
That doesn't make sense, usually it's putting
electricity,
on par.
That's an interesting.
Oh,
thing to
right.
follow up on.
Yeah, the electricity should be half of what you budgeted.
Yeah, I would
That's
think.
pretty
That's consistent.
manageable,
You know.
yeah.
Rain might decrease your water budget, but I don't know what's gonna affect your.
yeah, so electricity is the other question.
We might have just.
And that might be, yeah, that might be. Every year we budget, well, last year was budgeted, but you know, so one question, you can ask them or you can. Yeah, maybe I can try to find old ones of these to show you, like, is this something that happens every year?
So where did they end up in their actuals, 150? They were
150 versus 190?
They were 40,000, almost 40,000 under budget. So what did they do with that money? That goes back, or what did they do?
It goes to free cash.
It goes to free cash? I just think we should look at actually budgeting closer to what we expect to spend. That money needs to go somewhere else.
You have to get the projected right, that's what
Yeah,
they do.
yeah, or if they need it for somewhere else in their budget, let's put it in the right place.
I'll find out and get back to you.
Good catch, team.
And one other one is the miscellaneous, what, do you know what's in the 9,000?
I don't.
They didn't spend it.
Hmm.
It's a new project.
It might, I mean,
Did they say they wanted to fund one of the part-time people? Is that what they wanted to
Yeah,
do?
they wanted to get one of the part-time people onto salary.
Right, but they have almost 40,000. They could fund it with. If you're
Oh,
gonna use
you're
everything in
saying-
there. Yeah, if you're gonna use everything in there. Not that you have to, but
well, it's being paid for, that part-time person's being paid for from somewhere.
right,
Where the, oh, from the revolving fund.
right, but if you
Well,
want to
maybe the
allocate to
revolving
a
fund is the
full-time-
appropriate place to pay it from. If that's appropriate, then keep it there. Take that 40,000 and put it in the
Put it somewhere else.
snowplow budget
Yeah,
or
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
Are we at the end of the slides?
I think
Let's
so.
find out. Yes, I think we are. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cecilia.
Any other Parks and Rec discussion? Well, I just said we might take some of that extra money and put in the snowplow budget, which is a good segue to the DPW.
Yes, so after my snarky behavior, I'm not as prepared as Cecile. So hopefully don't all take that out against me. I did talk to Rena Fernandez, who's the new DPW director, on this past Friday. And she's on the job as the DPW director for about a year. She's been at MFS, she's been at Milton for about 5 years. She was a town engineer before she became the head of the DPW. And if I have a bunch of questions I still haven't quite figured out in my own mind about how all this works together. But their increase in the budget is about 7.5%, which is a level service in their mind. And they think it's all due to the cost of operations, whether it's because of increased labor costs due to the union contracts or because of the supplies and the like that they have to put through on their budget. I thought there were three interesting things that she really talked about in the budget process. So one was snow and ice, exactly as Jay kind of prefaced. They have historically put $160,000 aside for snow and ice, which is historically way below what they actually spend. They spend typically closer to $500,000 in snow and ice, and snow and ice, I guess, is the one place under I think the regulations that they're able to kind of true up over the course of the year somehow. But they've decided, since their historical spending of snow and ice is substantially above the 160 that they typically budget, they've increased that budget from 160 to 250, and their idea is to gradually increase that to get to the 500 to have a more realistic budget assumption as to what they spend on snow and ice.
So why do they, if they know they're spending that on a regular basis, I don't understand what the incremental budgeting is. What are they trying to do?
I think they're trying to have what they budget be more aligned with what they actually spend on an annual.
Right, but you're saying
but
on an annual
changes every
basis,
year
it's
based on the snow
500, right?
amounts. Yeah, so, but they
So
don't
why
have
would
the
we
room
bid-
to take it all the way up in 1 year, because it would be too big of a change.
I'm guessing the
It's
town.
realistic, it's a-
I'm guessing the town manager would be like, what the heck, this is a $340,000
But it's a realistic
increase."
expense, though. It's
It
not
may
like-
be, but my guess is that would,
I think it's about moving the money from the other places. It's not like they're increasing their budget to reflect this. So they're taking it out of other parts of the budget to gradually increase that. If you took one 160 to 500, it would be meaningfully detrimental to other parts of it. So they're planning to change it
The
gradually.
expense is the expense, so that's where I'm not understanding why you would do that right away.
There are also two wrinkles in Massachusetts law. One of them I know about and the other one I've heard and I'm not sure about. The one I know about is for every other budget besides snow and ice, on June 30th, or within a few weeks of June 30th, you better get that budget settled somehow. Snow and ice is
You
the
have to
other,
commit to it in June, basically.
sorry, at the end of the year when.
Yeah.
So snow and ice is the only budget where at the end of the year, if you don't have enough to cover what you spent, you can, and I'm flailing a little bit because I don't know the details, but state law gives you some leeway. If you spent too much on snow and ice, you can
True up at the end
carry
of
it
the
over
year.
to the next year. The
What are
other,
you carrying over, the expense or the?
I'm not entirely sure, I'm sorry. I just
It's fine.
know you have more flexibility than other budgets.
Okay.
That is the reason why it's been underfunded or under budgeted over time, because they do have that flexibility. I don't understand. what
So
they're
they wanna
thinking.
use the money up front for other things and then cover it at the back end if there's an additional
But they're
expense.
gonna
that's what they're-
change that process to get something to be over time closer to what they actually typically spend in a year.
The other one that I've heard discussed around this table, but I've never seen it in writing or anything, is something like, once you set your snow and ice budget, you can't set it lower later. So if we set it at 500,000 and then we started
Oh, so
just
you're
having more
stuck,
efficiencies.
so
I don't
That's
know that
interesting.
for a fact, I've just heard that discussed around this
Would
table.
that be dictated by the state or?
Yeah,
some legal-
something, it's some sort of state law,
Oh,
so.
interesting, okay.
That's a
And I
reason to
understand.
always set a little bit under, cause it's, it varies,
That's
if we
for
had, like Nick said, this weekend, how many Sundays are we gonna have a dusting of snow this year? Maybe 2, maybe 20, I don't know,
Right.
maybe not 20, but.
Let's hope not.
So the second thing I asked her, what has been her biggest surprise as the DPW director? And one of the things she said was that, kind of attracting and retaining staff is a challenge for them. And I kind of asked her to elaborate on that. And she thinks that they seek to pay competitively to other DPW departments, but they are paying a discount to private contractors that provide similar services. And if you look at the benefits for being a long-term employee in the town of Milton and getting a pension, that maybe over time it would work out to be competitive. But a lot of the people that they're trying to recruit and retain are younger people who want the cash today. And so they're not going to compete with those folks from a compensation perspective. They are trying to do other things to try to compete with those people. So one thing that they put a program in place where they're training and sponsoring people to get their commercial driver's license, which allows them to drive like the snowplow vehicles. And that's a valuable commodity for folks that will give them the ability to go work in other places as well. So that's been a recruiting tool that they've used to try to attract people, and they can do that within the operations that they have available to them. So that's been helpful. I think the third thing that is noteworthy about the DPW budget is something that Nick Milano referred to earlier today, which is that their union budget, their union contract is up, and the solid waste contract is up at the end of this year. And so as they look to renegotiate those things for future years, that could be significantly impactful to the DPW budget going forward, not as much in the fiscal year coming up. So those are my big highlights to share. I have some more work to do and hope to come back with something that is similarly skillful to what Cecile did in the new year.
If I can say one other interesting thing about the DPW budget is only part of the DPW is funded by the DPW line item budget on our budget. So for example, the director of the DPW, if we decide that, or not we, but if it is decided that 1/3 of her time is dedicated to water, 1/3 is dedicated to sewer, and 1/3 is everything else, then 1/3 of her salary is gonna come from the town budget that is labeled DPW. The other third is gonna come from our sewer bills that all of we pay. And the other third is from the water bills, and that flows through the warrant on a different line item. Same with her health insurance benefits.
Right.
1/3 will come from that. So when Mr. Milano said briefly, one source of revenue is indirect costs from, I forget, from revolving funds, or maybe said something different. That's what he meant. 1/3 of the DPW director's health insurance comes from sewer bills. 1/3 of her health insurance comes from the water bills. Maybe it's just more of a note of interest than anything else, but it's
No, for sure. And that's one of the things I want to try to learn a little bit more about. Like in the summary that they have 7 different budgets, 4 funded from the municipal tax levy and 3 from the separate and distinct enterprise funds. And solid waste, I thought, was one of those enterprise funds, but it's included in the DPW general budget. So I'm not sure which ones are the enterprise funds and which ones are the general budget. So that's one thing I need to kind of learn more about and kind of have some of those details to share with folks a little more.
I believe it's water, sewer, and stormwater.
Could be. Yeah.
Jay, can I ask a question? This is something related to what Brian said earlier about charging for water and electricity by department. Just allocating this like activity-based costing kind of, is that what's happening across departments? Like, why would each of them have its own electricity bill and water? You know what I mean?
Well, even in the
You're
D-
saying,
That's
why
how it
would
should
one
be.
department have a bill versus another? Like, isn't the same provider providing it for the whole town? And is that what, we're just allocating it by usage? Is that like
By facility.
those type?
They're different buildings.
Yeah, I'm sure it's
I
by
would assume
facility.
that would
By
be why.
each.
Obviously, the schools are the schools.
Right, but like the DPW has an electric bill, park has an
Well, no, the
electric bill, like
DPW
I
has
don't
4
understand
electrical
like.
bills or more. That's one of my questions as I was going through them, like the vehicle maintenance is carved out as a separate budget in the DPW. And they have their own water and they have their own electricity tied to that, so they have in the DPW
Have their own
yard,
contracts
they
with
have a building in the DPW yard that has its own meters for those services. And so that's broken out separately. And what's interesting is that they provide vehicle maintenance for 225 vehicles in the town. So they're servicing all the police cars and all the fire equipment and the town cars as well in that one building. And yet it's all part of the DPW budget. And so I thought that was interesting as well. I don't know if some of that then gets put into other budgets also, but the operations of that one building and the people that work in that one building are all in DPW
Well,
budget.
I guess, I guess my question is like, so Cecile went through hers, there's a line item for water, there's a line item for electricity, right? Like that's for budget, in the
Okay.
budget, right? And then Parks and DPW has their own electricity and water. Like, they have separate contracts for.
I don't know what you mean by contract. I mean, we do have a, electricity provider, but that's negotiated by probably, is it Consolidated Facilities, do you think?
Right, so we're saying that we have one provider and then we're just allocating it by department, is that?
By
It's not really allocated, it's
Each
just a
of
different building.
facilities, each facility should have a meter, so they're responsible for their own
Okay, so
facility.
they're putting it in that budget, like basically
It's
to
not like
see what
one
the
building.
operation of that particular division. So it's not like they have their own separate contracts, because you were saying something about there was
Health
a
is an
water bill that was
example.
bigger.
Oh, yeah, right. That was for Parks and Recreation. Oh, the
That was the
school
school.
department has
Oh,
their
okay,
own
with school
water bill.
departments, that they're separate because they manage their stuff separately than the rest of the town.
Also, I think it's, by building, like the different groups that live in town hall don't separate up the electricity bill, I don't think.
No, I'm talking about like she presented hers and it's like, okay, I wanted to make sure that we weren't like, they're not going out and getting their own contracts. It's like being allocated by, okay, Parks and Rec, and then like the usage that they're using or another division. It's not like they have their own separate contracts. Like when you mentioned it was the school building, the school system that you were talking about, that's different because I know they operate separately. So if they're getting bills that are higher than us,
Yeah, again, I
it
don't know
should
what
be
you
the
mean by
same.
contract.
Well, no, I'm saying it, the provider is the provider, right?
Yeah.
One water provider.
Right. So
Yeah.
why would they be charged more in one division versus another? That's what I was thinking about.
Because they have the meter at
So
that
it's the
building.
meter that's causing the
Like this
problem.
building has,
Okay,
I would
alright,
this building definitely has a water meter,
okay.
and I don't know if this building belongs to the town or the fire department's point.
So it's, so it's like a utilization meter issue, not like a contract.
Because you're thinking about the problem that was there, and was that problem townwide? It sounds like probably not. There was like a leaky faucet somewhere or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out, like, are we
Or whether it
separate,
was on
negotiating
responsible
contracts
water.
differently for different departments? Or it shouldn't be, okay, alright.
You had a question.
Yeah, so
Oh,
for.
this is gonna be payback.
No,
It's
no,
good.
no, no, no. I'm just, I think, I'm just curious. I saw there was an opening for the town engineer, like a vacancy. So I'm curious, like if, when you go talk, like,
They have a bunch of vacancies. I think they have 6 vacancies in total in the DPW at the moment. And the town engineer is one of them for sure. Yes. So it's something that they're working through. Like I said, Marina, she was really nice and very open. She offered a tour of the DPW yard anytime I wanted it, which was very nice of her. She said that the recruiting of people has been more demanding of her time than she expected it would be.
is it, like, is the market currently not good for hiring, or is it typically?
I think she thought there was the competition for the private folks was a big hurdle for them in
So
terms of
salaries
attracting new
offered,
people.
basically.
The salaries, she didn't, the salaries in terms of versus other DPWs, she thought they were competitive on. And she hopes that they maintain that with the renegotiation of the union contracts. I think she talked about, was it COLA? I think was the acronym that she used, which I think is what the salary bands that the town uses. So she thinks those are competitive today. I think that's the right term that I used. I'm not sure about that. She thought the challenge was really against private providers of similar services, and that the compensation there is a challenge for them. And she thinks that is a function of the youth of today, just to talk about something we talk about in my work. So, which I understand.
Do you have any idea if these vacancies can't be filled in FY '27, like what are the impacts on DPW?
I think it's the overtime that Nick Milano was talking about earlier today. And I doesn't think she can fill them. And I think it's not like it's been a chronic challenge. I think that, positions come filled and then unfilled But they have about, I think it's 6 positions in total that are unfilled currently.
Are those like CDL drivers mostly? Do you know? Like are they, so they having to pay triple overtime because they have to use other people? Because they don't have enough? Just wonder if it's how cost effective this.
She said in the summary that she has, there are 6 field positions that are vacancies. It doesn't describe what those field positions are, and 1 administrative position. The town engineer is actually not listed here as an open position in the process today.
It's listed on row 12 as vacant though.
One thing
Sure, I'll
Nick
check.
had mentioned
I'll
was
check.
that-
Yeah.
I think Nick mentioned that the appearance is that there's a cost savings when they would have overtime because FTE is maybe more expensive all in. So I don't think you would see a big, a
This
big
is no
cost
benefits
increase
paid on
because
it.
of overtime. So it sounds like overtime would maybe look like we're saving money, but probably not something we wanna do.
But when it comes to like the snowplow drivers, for example, if they don't have them on staff in Milton that have the appropriate licenses to be able to do that, then they hire contractors, and that is not saving them money in those instances. So they would like to have the CDL licenses in Milton to be able to run the equipment that Milton has. One thing that she talked about was they have onboarded a new, I guess maybe they're piloting a new software program to help manage the sanding and plowing of the streets. And so that it can tell them which streets have been covered and which streets haven't been covered, so that you're not doubling down on some streets from extra treatment on the ice and sand. Or if somebody changes shifts in the middle of the night, the person that takes over will know which streets have been plowed and which haven't been plowed. And so, more efficiency, more safety, more cost savings. So I think, things like that sound like they are actively engaged in trying to maximize the services that they provide and constrain the costs as much as possible too. For someone who's only been on the job for a year, I was really impressed with her command of the details. So I can convey that to you here now as well as she conveyed it to me.
And you said she had been working in Milton before, right?
She had been the town
Like a
engineer,
promotion.
I think, for 4
Okay.
years prior.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's great that they were able to give her that role, because she sounds like she has a lot of institutional knowledge.
One of the things that came up last year when we talked to her was they were training people for CDL licenses. Once they finished the training, they would leave, and they'd have this great benefit.
It's pretty common.
So we had that problem in my company that I worked in too. So what we did was we trained them for free, but they were getting a benefit of like, $10,000 of training or something like that. So we'd make them sign a contract that if they left before 2 years, they had to pay you back the training costs. So that was a thought I threw that out last year, something like that.
Didn't come up in the conversation.
Maybe-
I can ask her about that.
Discover just people phone.
Okay. Any other DPW discussion? Okay. The only other thing on the agenda was other budget items, which to my mind means sort of the smaller budget items that didn't have a scheduled presentation in front of us. What I said earlier, like at the beginning of the year, and then I've repeated a couple times, but then have not yet put the rubber to the road, is that for the smaller items, I'd sort of like to see something written up, like just, again, what's going on in this budget? What is it? Is there any need for more spending in this budget? Is there any room to save? So what I'd like to see is just a small write-up that can then be shared publicly with the, not violating open meeting laws, share it publicly somehow, so that all the members of the warrant committee can learn what's going on with the fill in the blank, the unemployment budget, without having to take up time around this table. Now, to actually make that happen, and I appreciate James Lee reached out to me, he's actually written some up for the ones that he's researched. And he said, okay, now what do we do? And that's on me. So I think I will be reaching out to everybody who has smaller budgets assigned, sort of remind you, over the next, we're probably not gonna meet for another month or so. Remind you over the next month or so, can you learn about your budget, write something up? I'll figure out, start getting them, I think we can have them posted on the warrant committee website, then it's public, no open meeting violations, everybody can see it. And then everybody will learn, okay, here's what the whatever budget is. So thank you, James Lee, for reminding me of that. And I will be probably contacting people one-on-one. I don't know if there's a better way to, so remember, you have the this and this, try to learn about it, write a little summary.
So should we send that to you?
So do we have time to other stuff to talk about? So what is the process? We meet again in January. Town leadership will kind of finalize budget in like February and then
By the end of January.
And then we kind of review some of these discussions again to see if there's been any changes from what has happened over the past 2 months or so of these preliminary conversations. And then we'll make kind of our recommendations as part of the war process as a result of that. Is that kind of, do I have that right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. I mean, as I discussed with Mr. Milano, if we have things, if we can already see where we have things that we might want a little bit different than, business as usual. Like I'm thinking back to the library presentation. People were sort of excited about adding another, was it a person and a half to the library? Now it's business as usual, maybe they wouldn't add anybody to the library. Maybe that would be, I shouldn't say maybe, but maybe that would be something that we can discuss in January. Like, is there any sort of non-business as usual request to Mr. Milano before he finishes the budget? Say, Mr. Milano, you're finalizing the budget. We really would like to see you add a person to the library if possible. If we give him that feedback before he finishes the budget, that's better than giving him the feedback afterwards. And he'll listen or he won't, or I'm sure he'll listen. He'll do what we request or he won't, and then give us the finalized budget. So we'll already have had some input. And then we can look at it and say, okay, I mean, and say what we think. If health insurance is coming in as high as we think, if the school budget request is coming in as high as it sounds like it might, and if expected revenues don't come in higher, something's gonna have to give. And Mr. Milano will have to make decisions about what to give, and maybe we'll have a different opinion about what should give. That might be one topic of discussion. I know I'm hedging a lot, but.
No, I was just curious if that was good. Thank you.
So Mr. Milano will have to put together a balanced budget by the end of January, meaning the revenue coming in equals the money going out. And as we saw tonight, he's $2 million short of that at the moment. So I have no doubt he'll get there. I just don't know how he'll get there.
I would say in the past, we've had no opportunity to give an opinion. It's all cooked. And it's kind of, here's the budget, and we just look at it and we talk. At least now we can share some thoughts that we think these are good investments or these are, bad investments, I guess.
So I'm looking ahead, assuming we skip the last few weeks of December. January 5th is a Monday. I'm flying back into the state from Texas. So I'd say maybe the following Monday, January 12th, we get things rolling. Okay. And feel free to contact me offline between now and then, and I'll be contacting a lot of you between now and then. Any questions, anything we should be doing in the next month? Okay.
Oh, I guess, Jay, as we get, if we suddenly get some more info on some of these other warrant items, I just like to get ahead of those, especially the one that I might be involved with. So,
Okay.
if Nick is like giving you information or whatever in between there, then, feel free, obviously, to contact any of us that you think are
Okay.
going to be, relevant. I just like to get ahead of that if I can.
Good.
Cool.
Okay,
Thanks.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
All in
Second.
favor?
Oh.
And seconded?
Yes, please.
Right. Thank you very much. Have a good holiday.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, Jay.